Sati continued, Brahmana, upon hearing Agni's words, the Rakshasa instantly transformed into a boar and abducted Poloma with the speed of the wind, or even of thought itself. At that moment, Brigu's unborn son, enraged by the outrage, emerged prematurely from his mother's womb. For this reason, he was named Chyavana, the fallen. The Rakshasa beheld the infant falling from her body, radiant as the sun, and immediately released Poloma. He collapsed and was reduced to a heap of ashes. The grief-stricken Poloma, O Brahmana of Brigu's lineage, then gathered her son Chyavana, Brigu's child, and departed. Brahma, the grandsire and Pitamaha of all creation, the father of all creation, observed this faultless wife weeping in profound sorrow. Moved by her devotion to the child, Brahma consoled her. The tears that flowed from Poloma's face formed a mighty river, which followed in the wake of Maharishi Brigu's wife. The Pitamaha of the worlds, noting the river trailing Poloma, named it Vadusara. It flowed alongside the hermitage of her son Chyavana. This was how Chyavana, the son of Brigu, who is renowned for his profound austerities, was born. Brigu beheld his son Chyavana and the child's beautiful mother. Overcome with fury, the rishi demanded, "Who revealed your identity to the Rakshasa, enabling him to seize you?" "O sweet smiling one, the Rakshasa could have not known that you were my wife. Disclose the informant, that I may pronounce a curse upon him." Poloma answered, "Master of the 6 attributes, it was Agni Deva, or the demigod, the fire god, Agni, who identified me to the Rakshasa, who then carried me off as I cried out like a bird. Your illustrious son rescued me. Upon witnessing his birth, the demon or Rakshasa released me, fell, and was consumed to ashes." Upon hearing this, Brigu's anger intensified. In his wrath, he cursed Agni, the demigod or fire god, declaring, "From here on out, you shall consume all things, Agni, pure and impure alike." This concludes what I call Section 6 of the Mahabharata in the Poloma Parva. Now I will begin my spiritual reflections and analysis of this very interesting scene in the Mahabharata. Please remember to leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I really appreciate it. Notice that the demon turns into no other type of creature than an animal, a boar. The boar, in Carl Jung's psychological terms, or Jungian terms, is the shadow. It's the animalistic impulse that has been repressed. It's what this demon, this Raksha, has been suppressing within himself while he has been waiting for Agni's determination or answer or judgment, as I described it in the previous episode of Naked Hindu Tales. Okay? Now this impulse, this comes out, and it comes out in the form of an animal, basically, a boar. And that is intentional because it is trying to get through to us that the human was placed on earth, or was allowed to come into being on earth, to be a mark of spiritual elevation, to be a mark of enlightenment. And that kind of elevation and an enlightenment simply cannot be found in the animals, or the non-human animals of the world. This kind of impulse often bursts forward when sacred boundaries are breached. That's exactly what the demon did. He did not even care what Agni's final response was he just wanted to abduct Poloma anyways. And we have, if you intuitively listening to the stories as I am recounting them to you from section 5 and section 6, it's not a surprise because you can sense in this demon this angst, like he's just not going to care what Agni has to say about Poloma's place, about Poloma's marriage. He's going to take her anyways, and that's exactly what he does. He therefore breaches sacred boundaries. That is the animalistic impulse. That is a sign of the lack of spiritual elevation, evolution. We have here de-evolution, and not only spiritually, but also physically. So Hinduism respects the reality of evolution. We have to remember that. Many people look at the 10 avatars of Vishnu as sort of a ancient description of, or hint, like a major hint being dropped by God of evolution, physical evolution on Earth. That's how a lot of people view the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Now, of Lord Vishnu. So here in this story of the Mahabharata, section 6, we have de-evolution, spiritually and physically being expressed. Physically because we have complete transformation of what is like a semi-human demon into a complete non-human being. The Rakshasa, he speaks, he talks, right? He communicates with Agni. He's able to process thoughts. So we can see our human side in him, as I explained in the previous episode. However, he chooses to reverse his evolutionary progress, however little he might have of it, right? So we have this transformation into a much more pure animalistic form here, which is the boar. That's what the text is trying to get through to the ancient human intelligence who was listening to this Mahabharata, in ancient times. Notice that the boar, or this demon who transforms into a boar, runs off with Poloma, and the text says at the speed of even like faster than even the speed of thought. The text is reminding us that our temptations can often outrun cognition. By the time the mind says, no, this is not right, the animalistic impulse, the de-evolutionary phase is already underway and playing out and expressing itself. So the Mahabharata is telling us, listeners in the postmodern world, to be aware that temptations can captivate you even faster than the speed of thoughts coming to you, okay? This is important. And this is why we must do the spiritual work that is necessary, like worshiping using Hindu mantras, worshiping God using Hindu mantras, to be able to have a greater control over temptations and captivation by a world that is full of stimuli. Now, the story features a premature birth, and it feels very shocking and sudden. It feels as if the birth of Brigu's son comes about extremely suddenly, in a very shocking form. It's like the force of the abduction of Poloma ends up being such a shock to the system of Poloma that she ends up giving birth to her son, Chavana. To Brigu's son, Chavana. That's actually what is going on here, even though the Mahabharata doesn't go into that kind of detail. We can surmise in the postmodern world that likely just the shock of being abducted by this demon who then suddenly transforms into this complete animal is so forceful, on Poloma's just entire being, her system, that her baby just ends up kind of popping out of her. Let's put it like that, okay? But what is fascinating about this infant is that even though Chavana is born from this negative circumstance, highly negative, very unfortunate circumstance, and suddenly, very suddenly so, the baby ends up being the reason for the demon's death, like immediate death. The infant shines like the sun. And here again is where Hinduism is being the very realistic religion that it is. In this Hindu myth in the Mahabharata, we have an unfortunate situation leading to something quite positive and necessary, leading to a situation that brings about peace onto the mother to some effect, right? The demon is vanquished immediately when this child is born, very extremely suddenly and prematurely. And that is life. Often we don't even know when some of the negative circumstances or shocking events that we are going through end up leading to something positive. Or let's say you live in a very urban environment where it's very hard to find car parking every time you come home from work. And one night you're so tired, you don't want to keep driving around to find parking. And you end up just, somewhat blocking, maybe partially blocking a driveway of a home, and you go back into your home. The next day you come back and you find out that the person who owns that home ended up, giving you warning stickers on your car, or ended up leaving a warning note for you on your car. And that just irks you. It gets you upset because it's such a difficult area to find parking in. And you say to yourself that the driveway was still, available and open for exit and entry, and that you didn't block it completely. So what's the problem, right? You think that to yourself, and you get angry that the homeowner of that driveway or the owner of that driveway ended up, giving you warning notes on your car that you found the next morning. So it upsets you, and you might even decide to let it run your day. That upset, that disappointment, that anger, that shock that sometimes other people cannot be considerate considering the urban environment that you live in. So you might let that, sit on you the entire day, those emotions, because of what's happened to you that morning. And you really realize that you probably should never, block this person's driveway even partially at night. So you don't. And then, maybe 1 week later, by the grace of God, a rental parking opens up at a very decent price, not far from your home, and you are able to grab that rental, parking rental for your car, 24-hour parking for your car at a great price. So sometimes, our emotions, they can come out we get very shocked. But for those of us who are faithful, who pray to God, God hears, God knows, God is aware of what has upset you, what has angered you, especially in shock. And God usually delivers events into your life sometime down the road that reconcile those emotions, that bring balance back, that bring you peace and relief, and bring you some more comfort, so that you no longer need to be shocked in the future, or you no longer carry the risk of being shocked in the future. That is indeed the way the world sometimes works for the faithful, the way the world sometimes works for the spiritually attentive individuals, okay, the faithful ones. Now realize this, that when the demon combusts or is reduced to ashes, the ashes are the refuse or the trail of a false identity. So the false identity is broken. And it is broken, fascinatingly, by an infant who is said in the Mahabharata to shine like the sun. That's how the baby Chavana comes out, okay? That's how the son of Brigu comes out, shining like the sun. Remember what I taught you in the previous episode about light and about heat and fire, the element of fire that transmits both heat and light. And the fact that light specifically has a strong connection to Shakti, Durga Devi, Parvati, right? The female face of God in Hinduism, the goddess. And the goddess is the one who destroys many demons in Hindu mythology. But what is she really? She is wisdom, divine intelligence. She is the true identity. She is actual truth, the absolute truth. That is why the Rakshasa's ashes, the demon's ashes, are the refuse of a false identity. Okay? That's false identity obliterated by the infant who shines brightly, light, right? We are reminded of that analogy or connection to light energy. The infant shines like the sun. The baby, this infant, is also pure innocence. We are the Mahabharata section 6 here is juxtaposing the baby as unfiltered innocence with the demon's lack of innocence. Let's put it like that. Okay, and the lack of the demon's innocence is especially made apparent to us when he decides to abduct Poloma anyways, despite what the fire god, the demigod, in Agni, told him was the truth about his lack of relationship with Poloma. The other thing we have to remember here about about the baby is that through the baby we see that according to God, or spiritual power, according to God, is found not because of someone's size. Just because someone is older or an adult does not mean that that individual has genuine power, spiritual power, meaning divine intelligence or wisdom marking them just because of their size. It's about uncorrupted presence. The baby is the uncorrupted presence. So in the baby lies the spiritual power, true spiritual power, which is wisdom, divine intelligence, naturally. The baby is much more of a vessel for it than the demon is. So it doesn't matter if one is an adult or an older person or a senior citizen. It does not mean automatically that that individual is more wise than a very young child, for example. Okay, a very observant child. Now, in contrast to the scene that we have in Mahabharata section 5 that I conveyed to you in the previous Naked Hindu Tales podcast episode, in contrast to that section, here we have in Mahabharata section 6, Poloma actually being given characteristics. Okay, she's actually being given a voice and a stance, and she's actually being comforted. Okay, she's being treated very humanely, very humanely. We don't see that really happening in the previous episode. Okay, we don't really see that happening in section 5. Her voice is completely silent. She has no say at all in the judgment that Agni conveys to Rakshasa as to her marriage, okay, and the promise her father made regarding her marriage. So here, however, we have her being comforted. We have her being treated very humanely after the demon is reduced to ashes. Now, the story is actually reminding me of something else that I wrote about in my book, What is God Good For? Evil, Karma, Sin, and Suffering, Correctly Explained Finally. I encourage you all to read my books, grab my books on Amazon. It reminds me of Eve from the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Bible, you know, the famous story of Adam and Eve in the Western world. The Eve is supposed to be on a journey after she is tempted successfully by the snake or serpent. She's supposed to follow the path of forgiveness. Here in Hinduism, you know, Hinduism being a much more real, true to reality religion, we have that at the moment of the demon's destruction, Poloma is comforted and there's sort of like this, she is released from sins and suffering. What sin really is a form of suffering. And therefore, she is ready and prepared to have, you know, Brahma, the Lord of creation, the creator God in Hinduism, in the Hindu Trinity, visit her, be in her presence. She can have that happen to her because the demon has been vanquished from her presence. Wherever there is chaos, at that point of existence cannot exist a point of goodness. That point in space and time must be transformed to something else, much less chaotic, in order for God to be found there. Let's put it like that, as I explain in my book, Who God Really Is. And that's exactly what happens with Poloma here. Once the demon is vanquished, once the demon as a boar, as a full-on animal, is not touching her body and is not, she's not present near it, right? And the demon is no longer within her presence, around her, near her, touching her. The boar is completely, there's no life force energy in that demon as a boar. The demon is completely dead, done with. In that gap or space, now goodness can come to comfort Poloma. And that is when Brahma, the creator God, is able to enter the story. And he does. And he gives her comfort. He gives her comfort and consolation. There's also a fascinating thing that the creator God does. He creates a river, or he allows a river to follow her. It's almost as if the river is meant to be a sacred site of memory, holding the memory of what Poloma went through. It is rivers and water, we think of them as transformational, right? They can heal us. We think of them as elements of, or physical places of self-rejuvenation, self-healing, places that can release us from our trauma. And that is because they carry a memory of some sort. Poloma here has that river follow her, and Brahma decides, the Hindu god of creation in the Hindu Trinity decides that it shall be so, that this place will hold the memory of Poloma's tragic, the events that she went through. So the river serves multiple purposes here. One of holding memory, of reminding us what we should not fall into, which is temptation, reminding us that we must use the power of our mind to overcome temptations, or to keep temptations at bay as much as is possible, and ultimately reminding us that it serves us very well to pray, to worship God, especially using Hindu mantras, because only that will get us to have a mind that is able to keep temptations at bay. That is going to actually help us not to be naive, as Poloma was initially naive. Remember, she was very hospitable to this demon. She gave him fruits and roots, right? Like plant roots. She treated the demon like very hospitably, right? She was very inviting. She invited the demon to enter her home, to enter the ashram of Brigu. She was naive. And God is teaching us, remember Poloma's story. She was a naive woman. You have to recognize who you are around and dealing with. Awareness is important. And remember that worshiping God can get your mind to have that kind of proper self-protective guard up, okay? In this overly unstable world that is full of stimuli, where even the demons, so to speak, come with smiles on their faces. That is what Brahma is trying to get us to realize the river really is. The river that he causes to follow Poloma, okay? Her tears are, carving out this mighty river. And yet, because the demon is removed from her presence by her son, her suffering is dissolved. So the river is also a source of healing wounds, tragic wounds, tragedy. For example, wounds from physical sexual assault and other kinds of assault that can especially take a deep root in us if we allow them to. Instead, we must quickly turn to God and allow those wounds to move off of us, move off of our psyche. Those kinds of wounds have to move off of our psyche quickly as possible once they occur. And it's fascinating here that we have a woman whose child causes the demon to be vanquished. And the child is shining like the sun. Some listeners will see an analogy to Jesus, right? Jesus Christ from from Christianity, an analogy to how he's born to he's born to a mother, right? Mother Mary, and he is the son who ends up releasing Eve from her suffering. He is the forgiver of sins. There are actually many interesting parallels between the Mahabharata and the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Bible. Now Brahma comforts her who was attached to her son. He comforts Poloma, who continued to be attached to her son who was like her savior. Her son saved her. Her love is the antidote to chaos. What this means is that as long as Poloma continues to be attached to her son, continues to have faith in her son Chavana, for as long as she does that, all the things that will come about in her life, all manifestations in her life, all created events and thoughts and joys and different kinds of events, they will be kind to her. They will be goodness. They will be in goodness. They will be created in goodness, not in chaos or evil or danger or suffering, but only for as long as she remains attached to her son. So she's going to be comforted by Brahma, the creator God, meaning she's going to continue to be comforted by creativity, creative element. Everything that is created, for as long as she is attached to her son Chavana, everything that is created in her life is going to be beautiful or positive for her. Now, Poloma calls Brigu, her husband, this master sage, a master of the 6 attributes. What are the 6 attributes? Well, according to ancient Indian texts, ancient Hindu texts, they are 5 of those attributes are having power over the 5 elements, and then the 6th attribute is the mind or supreme intelligence, as I refer to it in my book, Who God Really Is. Okay? So in case you are wondering what are those 6 attributes, those are the 6 attributes. Now, the scene of Poloma giving birth is not so foreign to us. She gives birth under tremendous stress. In our postmodern world, in today's world, we see this happening, especially in war zones, right? Where, for example, midwives in the Middle East or in Africa, they often report pregnant women screaming while their region or their area is being bombarded, and their babies arrive anyways, right? So the women scream during pregnancy. And here, so this is not such a foreign, description to us. Here, Poloma gives birth. A life force energy gives birth even under such tremendous distress. She's being abducted by this animalistic demon. And this is literally life force energy refusing to be annihilated. This is God telling us that no matter what, creation shall persist. That demons, chaos, evil cannot overcome one of my key attributes, which is creative ability. That is like God saying that. That's what God is trying to get through to us through this shocking scene in section 6 of the Mahabharata. And notice that as soon as the baby does arrive, full of life force energy, shining like the divine light of Mahashakti, Mahaparvati, of wisdom, of divine intelligence, the demon, drops dead, completely is annihilated. So demons cannot persist. They simply cannot exist at any point in space or time where there is a mark of goodness, meaning where there is a mark of wisdom, of divine intelligence, i.e., a mark of God, as I explain in my book, Who God Really Is. That is what is happening here. That is what is happening here in truth, in complete truth, in the kind of truth that is rational for us humans in the 21st century. This might have been hard for the ancient human intelligence of thousands of years ago to recognize, when he or she was listening to the Mahabharata section 6, but it's rational for us and very easy for us to understand today. So this is exactly how we must understand it today, because we must understand God exactly as he has wanted to be known. And we are ready for that in the 21st century with our much more capable minds. Do grab your copy of my book, Who God Really Is, on Amazon today. And remember, please leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you are enjoying this podcast. I really appreciate your reviews. Now, what is fascinating is that at the end of this story in the Mahabharata, Bhrigu curses Agni, the fire demigod or the fire god, okay? And he says that this fire, Agni, that you shall consume everything, pure and impure alike, that nothing shall be left standing once it touches you or once you confront it, okay? Even everything, every being, everything shall be consumed by you once it confronts you. This is how it always shall be. And why is that the case? Even though Agni does say to the demon, Rakshasa, in the previous episode, that you demon, don't really have a right to Poloma. Poloma belongs to Bhrigu. That's who her husband really is, not you. So Agni in some ways does the right thing for Poloma and Bhrigu, but according to Bhrigu, it's really not enough for him, right? For Bhrigu, the Agni should never have even revealed who the identity of him. He should have never revealed details to the demon in the first place at all, okay? Basically, what Bhrigu is saying is that the fire demigod should never have allowed the demon to have even an inch of truth. Never even hear an inch of truth. Agni should just simply never have submitted himself to the demon's demands for an answer in the previous episode. But he did, right? The fire demigod gave the demon an answer. Bhrigu is kind of saying that demons have no part in truth, in the real truth, in a sacred truth, in a truth that has been established by sacred Vedic rites and rituals. Agni forgot those boundaries. He allowed the Rakshasa to have some inkling or some insight into what the truth was, or to really be told the complete truth, right? About Poloma's marriage to Bhrigu. So Agni is cursed by this sage. And what is fascinating is that the curse is really saying that Agni, whoever confronts you, whoever confronts fire, will be charred, will be basically obliterated, okay? Will be consumed by fire. And so on one level, the text is trying to explain to the ancient human mind, who is, back then, obviously hearing this story, trying to explain to the ancient human mind why fire hurts the good and the bad alike. Why does this element of fire, hurt good human beings and bad human beings alike? Why is it so destructible to everything, no matter the attributes of that thing or being or conscious being? And Bhrigu is explaining why here, in spiritual terms though, in spiritual metaphor, with spiritual metaphor or connection. It's kind of similar to how in the Hebrew Bible in the Old Testament, God explains to Adam and Eve why human beings have to work and toil so hard to just make a daily bread, right? To just get some food for themselves every day, and why women feel pain in childbirth, right? That's what happens in Genesis chapter 4 in the Hebrew or Christian Bible. Here we have essentially the same thing happening in relation to the element of fire. Why does fire burn everything alike, spread to everything alike, even though the different elements that it confronts or different beings that it confronts can be good or bad? Now, the other important thing that we have to recognize about Agni is that Agni, as I said in the previous podcast episode, is the vessel, the most pure or honest vessel, the most effective vessel for the transmission of Shakti. Shakti being, divine intelligence or wisdom. Durga Devi, the goddess. Agni is that, because Agni transmits, right, is able to transmit heat and light. Fire transmits heat and light. So Agni is illuminating, but also misunderstood here, right? Agni was trying to do the right thing. He didn't realize that he was not supposed to let a demon get in on any bit of truth, right? Wherever truth or good truth, absolute truth exists, demons cannot, demonic energy or chaotic energy, suffering, a form of suffering, cannot have any part to play in it. That's how it's supposed to be, right? That's a part of a fundamental framework of the universe. But Agni lets the demon in on the truth about Poloma's marriage to Briggu. And Agni thought, as we know from, if you listened to the previous episode of Naked Hindu Tales, Agni thought that he was doing the right thing by speaking truth, no matter the consequences. He ends up being misunderstood by Briggu. In some ways, we can see that he is a misunderstood character. So the fire demigod is illuminating. He brings about truth in the previous episode, but he's also misunderstood. Now, isn't that the way we understand, we see God's position in the universe, that God is illuminating, but also often misunderstood? Divine intelligence, which I call supreme intelligence, is illuminating, but also highly misunderstood. That is exactly what the text of Mahabharata section 6 is trying to get through to us as well, through the last part of Agni's curse here. Thanks for listening. Please leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and I'll be sure to answer any questions, spiritual or non-spiritual, that you might have that you leave in your review. So, don't hesitate. Let me know whatever questions you have, write them in your review, and I will answer your questions in a future episode for the benefit of all. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak with you in the next episode.